Good afternoon. I'm just recording a brief video to discuss the upcoming assignment over the study questions. I know that some of you have had some questions about what exactly is being covered by these questions, how to locate the information, and also I probably need to cover a few of the expectations that I have when you write your responses to these questions. First, the questions do concern the readings that you've been asked to do for the first few weeks. You'll note that the first question asks very specifically about Columbus. So you should be looking at the letters that Columbus writes back to the King and Queen of Spain, for instance. One of the major aspects within this question, as it talks about the assumptions, consider what Columbus writes in that letter. What he says, how he describes the people, the land, what he expects to find in this new world, how they relate to what the Europeans have. In regard to materials and how they've developed their own societies and civilizations and what they want to do. Recognize that when Columbus makes these assumptions, he really hasn't gone very far. He has seen very little. Columbus, one of the major aspects of the voyages that he'll make to the New World is that he really doesn't see the main continents much. The assumption is he probably did see the coast of South America. For the most part, he was just looking at islands, landing on different places. Hispaniola, for instance. And as such, he makes assumptions that, one, he's actually over on the continent of Asia and the outlying islands there. But what he also looks at is how these people are. Consider what he writes in his letters, how he describes them, what he says should be able to be found there. He is trying to be a little lean toward propaganda there as he responds, because he is wanting to, one, ingratiate himself with the King and Queen of Spain, who have funded this voyage and hopefully will fund further voyages. So keep in mind what he does, what he writes, how he describes these areas, and that what he's saying these people are like compared to the Europeans, what he says these people's civilization, society are like compared to the word here is empires. So just keep that in mind, and how he describes what the people are like. Another key aspect that you need to pay attention to is in the next question about Devaka. Think about how he, as he travels, remember he goes by himself. He gets lost and caught up in different areas. How he describes the people. Notice how that's different compared to how the typical European, especially the Spanish who were coming to this area, regarded the Native Americans, as we now call them. Columbus' term was Indians. That's the term I use there because that's how he called them. But think about how the Europeans view the Native Americans in regard to their capability, to their ingenuity, to their quality of personality and character. And then look at how Devaka describes these people and how his views really are unorthodox, very different from the others of his time, of his culture. And be specific when you raise those points. The next question concerns John Smith and how theatrical he was. John Smith is not the figure in the Disney Pocahontas movie. Sorry to tell you about that. No, he wasn't quite that way. John Smith was a man who had traveled a great deal, who had gone to a number of different areas, and who comes to the New World with the English colonists at what we now call Jamestown, with a very set purpose and view of what he's after. And when he describes that in his journals, what he writes down and what will eventually be published, look at the language, look at those terms, look at how he presents this world and the people in it, so that he knows this is going to be read by an audience of individuals who will probably never see this world, who will probably never see these people. Consider what he does there. Again, the theatricality of the language. The English theater, they like to see a great deal. They couldn't do actual deaths on stage, but they did quite a bit with blood and large figures. So keep in mind how he does that, how he describes the adventures he goes on, and look at very specific details. And don't be afraid to quote. And as it says in the instructions, be specific with your responses. Draw your information from the readings. Quotes will probably be expected so that you can then explain how those quoted passages give us the response, which is in this case question 3 about theatricality. In the fourth question, you're asked to look at William Bradford talking about the peace treaty that is reached with Massasoit and with Squanto. When the Pilgrims in 1620 arrive, they have a very challenging and difficult time. And it's only through the help that they receive that that colony, what we now call Plymouth, survived. So Bradford looks at this aid, and what is it that he links it to? How does he say it? The kind of aid that Squanto does provide. What is that aid? Specifically, what does he give them that allows this colony to eventually survive? And what is it that Squanto is trying to do? Why does he do this? Look at what the motivations probably were for this figure, this individual who is called Squanto, the name that is given to him. What he offers. And again, look at the text and see exactly how he does that. And then the last question asks you to look at the Mayflower Compact, go through it very specifically, and what are the passages within it? What are the terms and phrasings that are used within the compact that allow us to see that for the Pilgrims, as we call them, the Plymouth colonists, how they look at the role of God, divine authority, and what they are being led to establish, how they expect their world, their new civilization that they're seeking to develop to be. What is it that they're looking for? So pay attention to this idea about divine authority and the phrasings that's used within the Mayflower Compact. Another key point that when you're answering these questions, please keep in mind that I do expect details and information, specific details, quotes from the textbook, quote from the readings, and a little parameter you can use as a guideline when you're answering questions, especially in English class. I know these are what we would consider short answer questions, but a key trait that you need to keep in mind: responses to questions should be longer than the questions themselves. Details need to be specific. They need to be discussed, presented in a well-established and explained manner. So your responses should be longer than the questions, usually quite a bit longer than the questions. So keep that in mind as you're working on this. You have through tomorrow night to get these all answered. This video will be uploaded in a short time. I kept it fairly short. I just wanted to review the questions, go back over those, make sure you understood that this is where you're looking. Question 4, for instance, look at what William Bradford wrote. Look at how he details this treaty. What are the details he offers? What is the help that he explains that they received? And why does he believe that Squanto was guided to help them? What assistance does Squanto specifically provide them? And how does that assistance actually help this colony to survive? So just keep these points in mind as you're answering the questions. This is, again, a very brief video. I'm just trying to keep it 10 minutes or so, a little less. It's not a full lecture. I'm going to try to do an actual short lecture for us next week. We've been trying to get everything established and set up, and between the rosters being adjusted and other details and having to be dealt with, and issues coming up with some of the recording possibilities that we have, I've just have opted to go with a standby rather than using the recording from within Canvas right now. I'm just using something that I will then upload to my YouTube channel, then give you guys the link to it. So again, I'm looking forward to your responses. If you've already turned them in and this makes you want to redo them a little bit, you're perfectly free to do so. You should be able to make any adjustments and additions to your responses and resubmit those before the deadline. All right. Again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a video for you uploaded, and maybe in another week or two I can establish maybe a Zoom lecture that if any of you want to Zoom in, I'll establish a time for us. All right. Good luck with the assignment.